Hello everyone, welcome back. This is RandoGEEK. Found this article from Android Authority. I want to talk about it. I'm going to read the article quickly, and then I'm going to voice my opinion about this. Link for the article can be found down below for you in the description. US telecom subscribers are running out of carriers to choose from, and that's really bad. So, according to this article, we know that T-Mobile announced its plans to acquire most of US Cellular's wireless operations and select spectrum assets for $4.4 billion. T-Mobile's move is the latest business transaction that further consolidates the U.S. market, leaving consumers with no option but to majorly bank on the big three carriers for their telephony needs. This consolidation may be good for the carrier and will also be marketed as good for the consumer. However, as consumers, we will get the short end of the stick sooner or later. Consumers in the U.S. have largely stuck to four carriers. At the time, it was AT&T, Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile. Some outliers have flocked to smaller carriers like Dish Wireless and US Cellular, and a few consumers also prefer MVNOs based on the top carriers. However, with T-Mobile's acquisition of Sprint in 2018, the top four carriers consolidated into the top three. With T-Mobile's acquisition of US Cellular, the original top six carriers in the US are down to just the top four. The carriers are also on a spree to acquire MVNOs, like T-Mobile's acquisition of Mint Mobile in 2023 and Verizon's acquisition of TracFone Wireless in 2020, which have shrunk the available options to American consumers. Might I add, Verizon also bought Visible. That's not mentioned here, but that was a big acquisition as well. Now, we knew that, Visible was using Verizon's towers, but they didn't officially own a company as far as we knew. Verizon went and bought that and now basically operating it. Now it's still being run as a prepaid type of account, and that's why many consumers are still with them. Pricing is still good, but we have to keep in mind that that could change at any time because Verizon could easily flip the switch and try to make Visible even more profitable, sending prices up. All right, so if you're in the market for a new phone right now, chances are that your choices are going to be limited to AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, or only on MVNOs based on them. All right, so basically, that's pretty much all I'm going to read here. But what we're talking about here is I think you're getting the idea if you're listening so far. We're running out of options, folks. Things are changing. We're losing competition. This is not good for the wireless industry, even if you're a fan of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Hearing about T-Mobile's acquisition of US Cellular and the acquisition of Mint Mobile and Ultra Mobile might sound like a good idea, and for some it is. Your service will get better with T-Mobile if you're on their network. And if you respectively have been using T-Mobile for a very long time and you're faithful to them, you like the service, you like the plans, you think you're getting your money's worth, then this can be good news for you, especially if you're in an area where you'll get more, better quality of service now with the move and the partnership with US Cellular. But if you're not in that area, it probably makes no difference to you unless you plan on traveling in those areas. Then, again, we're back to it benefiting you. It's not that this is a bad idea. It's a good idea for T-Mobile, and hats off for them to make their move. Whether or not we feel they're overpaying, yeah, they are. But, they feel like they got to do what they got to do. There's a lot of areas where there's a gap in their service. There's a lot of consumers that are not being reached with the T-Mobile network, and they feel like we got to do what we got to do to get out there. We'll capitalize on this. We'll pay down our loans that we owe to US Cellular, and we'll keep moving forward. And that's basically what their plan is. They're raising prices on postpaid, I think prepaid as well, and then of course the OG postpaid accounts too. And they're also raising their home internet prices. So T-Mobile's been doing their math, recalculating and rebudgeting and basically reorganizing their entire portfolio. Their entire company is going through a change where they're trying to be taken more serious, and they want consumers to see that they mean business, and they're trying to become a stronger, more reliable network, not just the fun Un-carrier network that we knew a few years ago. They want to play in the big leagues with AT&T and Verizon. They want basically the same customers that feel AT&T and Verizon are reliable. They want that same respect. And this is basically what I feel like it's been all about. So, okay, fine. T-Mobile wants to be a better company overall across the board. That's cool. It's cool for Verizon to want to do that. It's cool for AT&T to want to do that. The problem here is what we read about, the three big carriers buying up the MVNOs, leaving no options for you other than to use one of their plans if you want their network. This is the problem. This is the problem because a couple of years ago, and way back, even further than that, obviously, 10 years ago, we had it made. A couple of years ago, we were still good. Now, we're losing options. Like I mentioned, Visible being owned by Verizon, TracFone being owned by Verizon, Mint and Ultra Mobile being owned by T-Mobile, Sprint being taken over by T-Mobile, and now US Cellular being operated under T-Mobile. What if you can't stand T-Mobile? What if you can't stand Verizon? What if you've had horrible, miserable experiences with those companies and you swore you would never do business with them directly? You like the network. You need the network, obviously. There's limited amount of, wireless networks, period, especially if you're in, a common city. Like, you're going to go for the network that works the best. It's usually going to be one of the big three. So you would use Mint Mobile instead of T-Mobile because maybe you had a bad experience with T-Mobile. Maybe you would have used TracFone or Visible instead of having to get a postpaid plan from Verizon. One, like I said, maybe you had bad experiences with them. Maybe you don't like doing business with them directly. Also, MVNOs are more likely going to be cheaper and may be all you need. Why would you want to spend $90 on my plan option from Verizon's postpaid for a bunch of perks that you plan to never use when you can get on Visible for $25 a month, get the basic plan, have some hotspot, and you're good to go? You don't need streaming services. You don't watch streaming services. Maybe you just watch YouTube. So this is the thing here. Now, right now, Visible is good. But again, Verizon can flip the switch at any time, start jacking up prices, and make it no longer worth your while. So this is the problem with the FCC allowing all of these acquisitions. I think it's got to be cut to some point where they need to say, no, we need to leave options for the folks that can't even pay their phone bills on an MVNO plan. Even $25 a month for some is too much to pay. And we have to really take a look at it and look at it from a consumer point of view, that this is bad news if we just keep allowing all these companies to consolidate. There really will be nothing left. And it would ultimately, at some point, hurt the wireless industry because people are going to lose interest. And they're gonna just go to whatever they can go. It might actually help, if anything. This could actually hurt the big three carriers at some point, and maybe benefit, cable companies like Spectrum, who's got Spectrum Mobile. Maybe we'll just go to them. And even though they're leasing out towers from the large carriers as well, it will still hurt the big three. Eventually, Spectrum could decide that they want to start building out their own network. And then, I don't know. But I mean, I think you catch my drift. It's like, it's really hard to kind of explain it all in greater detail because it's kind of like, the big three still win even when you're losing kind of thing. But at the same time, it's not right more than anything. It's just not right. And it needs to be nipped in the bud before it gets out of control. Whether or not they still benefit, whether you leave and go somewhere else, there won't be enough competition, that's for sure, which will still be bad for consumers. And it's not a good look. Like, I think in some cases, in this particular case with US Cellular and T-Mobile partnering up, I think it's a decent deal. I think it's a decent deal that might benefit both sides. US Cellular is dying out anyway. There's nothing left for them to really continue. They can't do it. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to do it. Okay, fine. The deal between Mint and Ultra Mobile was just a cash grab. Mint Mobile was making money. They were making money. They basically came in, I hate to say it, Ryan Reynolds used his name, his popularity, his celebrity to beef up the company, to market it, advertise it, and make it more valuable just based on his name. And that's exactly what happened. And he knew he was going to sell it. He knew he was going to be able to sell it and cash in. And there's nothing wrong with him making some money. But what happened here is, there's a lot of customers that are on Mint that don't want to be a part of the T-Mobile network. They don't want to be part of the business side of it. They're fine with the service. They don't want to pay T-Mobile. They were happy with Mint Mobile. They were happy dealing with a smaller company that they felt was better. They didn't want T-Mobile. Now they're being forced to use T-Mobile. And this is what I'm talking about. So these types of things need to be looked at. And, the FCC needs to really sit back and think about what they're doing when they just approve all these things. That deal should have been blocked. Simply because it's bad for competition and there was no real benefit for anybody. Not really. I mean, T-Mobile, yes, they got access to more consumers. They got a little bit more spectrum. They basically just got more customers. That's really all it did for them. And it was just a cash grab for Mint Mobile. And I don't think it should have been allowed, simply because it's destroying competition and this wasn't necessary. The deal with US Cellular, I'm looking at it a little differently. Whether or not you guys feel the same, you can comment down below. But I think if you're listening to what I'm saying, there's much more benefit to both companies with this deal with US Cellular that will make T-Mobile an actually better network for some customers that want to be on T-Mobile, that are not being forced to go to T-Mobile. They're already on that network, and they're in those areas where T-Mobile is just not good enough. They've stood with them because when they get out of town, T-Mobile comes back and is good for them. But maybe in their home where they are, it's not so great. They're stuck on Wi-Fi all day. We've seen it. Shoot, I have that problem with T-Mobile in my own home, and I'm not in the boonies. I'm not in the boonies, but it's dead area for some reason. It's not that good. And, using T-Mobile, I have to have Wi-Fi on most of the time. So I don't know. That's my feeling about this. I use this story to kind of update you what's going on, but also to piggyback off of it and voice my opinion that I think we're seeing a trend that's not good. Certainly not a good trend. It's a bad idea. And I hope that it gets limited. Like, we got to limit it. T-Mobile can't buy everything. Verizon can't buy everything. AT&T is not that interested in buying anything. They're building. They're just doing their thing, building slow. But at least they're not buying everything up. And I don't know if it's because they financially just don't want to deal with it. Perhaps. But either way, it's Verizon and T-Mobile that are buying most of it, and mostly T-Mobile, and it does need to be nipped in the bud a bit. Like, it's got to stop. Unless there's a real benefit, which after this acquisition with US Cellular, like, they should not be allowed to buy anything for a really, really long time because it's too much. Like, we got to start allowing some smaller companies to get back on. If anything, T-Mobile should promise to help the smaller MVNOs do a little bit better so that the competition remains. They should be forced to. They should be forced to help Dish, of all things. They should be forced to lend money or give money to Dish Network so that they can continue their build out, so that we have that fourth large carrier. That should be the requirement here. They have so much money, T-Mobile, to spend and buy everything up. Well, help out your fellow wireless carrier. Part of the whole deal with Sprint and T-Mobile was that they, Dish could become the fourth largest carrier. So again, we should go back to that. Let's rewind back to that and force T-Mobile to lend out a hand to Dish so that they can continue their process. Probably won't happen, but it should. Anyway, that's all I have for you here. Comments are welcome down below. There's just my opinion here. That's all it is. As always, thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.